Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I welcome you all. We are glad you are here for our webinar on the ASCI Professional Accreditation Scheme. My name is Sushma Best. I am a support officer of ASCI. Today, you will learn about what is the ASCI Professional Accreditation Scheme, why does the industry need an accreditation scheme, how does the scheme operate and who oversees the scheme, what are the benefits of registering under the ASCI Professional Accreditation Scheme. Our expert speaker, Peter Nagel, is here to help you succeed. Peter has been working with ASCI for more than 10 years. He spent his whole working career in a supply chain domain, various sectors like industry, government, academia. He is passionate about raising the level of professionalism in the supply chain. So it is an opportunity to learn from the session. Please ask questions and share your own experiences. Before we begin, let's review a few house rules to ensure everyone has a positive and productive experience. If you have any questions or comments, please use the chat feature or Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window. Also, be aware that this webinar is being recorded and we will upload the recording to our YouTube channel after the webinar. We appreciate your cooperation and hope you enjoy the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Now I will hand it over to Peter to start. Thank you so much, Peter, for giving us your time today. Over to you now.
Thanks, Sushma, and all around the table. Welcome to the webinar. As Sushma said, I've been in the supply chain domain my whole working career, and I was very keen to see that we have a professional level of professionalism in the industry. So I've been working on this since for quite a few years after I've started with ASCI. So I'll take you through a few of the things, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And also an invitation afterwards, if a question pops up, you're welcome to email me or even call me. So let's just look at a few things that prompted, and the numbers were different when we started with the scheme, but it prompted a lot of our thinking in the scheme. If you just look at some of the sizes of the market, now the logistics market, these are recent numbers. The logistics market in Australia, there in US dollars, 130 billion, and to grow more. You will see the supply chain management, which in terms of the MARC group that did the research, is predominantly the area where people oversee the total supply chain rather than just aspects of it. Again, it can grow to 1.9 billion. And we can go on and on. I wouldn't debate the difference between the logistics market and the freight and logistics market. I just quoted the numbers from different sources. But even in the product design and product lifestyle world, you will see this is a huge market. So having said that, we have people in the domain of supply chain managers, procurement managers, logistics managers that manage significant budgets. So we sit with some challenges. The supply chain, and I talk about supply chain managers, they read into that also procurement managers, logistics managers, and I will come to those different components in a minute. But they're not often on the workforce radar. We see that a lot of these people report to a contracts manager or to a finance director and so on. So it just does not sit where we think supply chain managers or procurement directors need to sit. And there's various challenges we face. There's as I just said, underrepresentation on executive level. Not very clearly defined educational paths. If you look at the universities offering degrees, I've just analyzed 3 different supply chain management degrees recently from 3 different Australian universities, and I put it in very, very blunt terms. These are different worlds. They're not focused on the same issues. One may have a procurement focus, one may have a transport focus, and so on. Whereas if you look at professions like the legal profession, somebody comes out with a law degree, then there's a reasonable commonality about what they have learned and what they have as a knowledge base. And the same with accountants and so on. So it's become for us very critical that we can support the supply chain workforce with professionalism, with training, with mechanisms that will ensure that we have equitable, sustainable access to products and services. So some of the challenges, if you look at the industry as a whole, then you will see, and I just listed on the left some professions, there's many more. But if you look at them, they all have some level of accreditation. Some has got their own legislative body, like physicians or doctors. They have the medical board. Others, like the lawyers and engineers, work with the Professional Standards Authority and financial planners. So I wouldn't go into that. The point here is that if you look on the right-hand side, we have different aspects, different elements of the supply chain. And when we looked at that, there was nothing there that registered anybody against certain sets of criteria. So, having said that, why did we start this professional scheme? We started it, first of all, because there were no standards. We could not find that. There's no consistency in the delivery of education. I just mentioned the different degrees with the same title coming out with contents that are vastly different. No consistent terminology. You ask 20 people around the table what the supply chain is, and you'll probably find 20 different definitions. There's no register of practitioners. And I'll come back to that, why that is necessary. So we can go on and on. No structured CPD program. Right now, after a while that we've developed the scheme, we have a structure in our CPD, and I'll show you that. But a lot of these things did not exist at the time. So we tried to figure out how would one go ahead to get this challenge addressed. So we approached a body called the Professional Standards Authority. That's a government body. They oversee the legislation for lawyers, engineers, accountants, a whole lot of them. That is the body that represents, or a government body that represents professions. I don't think we could have gone wrong, because that is the body that oversees, develop the guidelines, and they help organizations like ourselves to develop what we call self-regulatory initiatives. The ASCI accreditation scheme is self-regulated, and I'll show you later how it's regulated, but it's self-regulated. We regulate that through a structure and guidelines, but we can't just decide on the criteria for regulation. We follow the guidelines of the Professional Standards Authority. And that is the reason why we claim a level of credibility, if not full credibility for it, because we meet all those criteria. So based on that, we looked at ASCI and where we were going with ASCI. So we defined our vision as they're advancing supply chain towards a recognized profession. All the ones on the previous slide, or the one just before the previous slide, accountants and lawyers and real estate agents, they all have as a recognized as professions. In the supply chain world, we didn't have that. So that is our vision. And we have 4 components in pursuing that. One is an ethics management program. One is a accreditation scheme. One is the continued professional development. And then, of course, the industry advocacy. We act as a voice on behalf of our members. Now, you see the little red arrows there. It actually shows that we have full integration and full interaction between the scheme and then the ethics management and the professional development. Now, what is that interaction? The scheme is a technical aspect, which I will come to in a minute. It's a technical aspect. The eligibility criteria, what is the stream you register in, what's the requirements, and so on. But next to it is the behavioral aspect, which is the ethics management program in terms of the ethics behavior, the code of ethics, the professional standard, whistleblower policies, and so on. So it's a behavioral component, it's a technical component, and then the CPD is the ongoing support of those registrants and our members and the broader industry of programs that will support this vision. So let me just make this point clear here. What is an accreditation scheme? And I come across this still many times. People say, oh yeah, but I have this certification, and how does that compare? Or I have this certification in procurement, for example, how does that compare? An accreditation scheme is not a certification program. In very simple terms, a certification program has got a set of learning materials, or you get a textbook, or you get some materials that you would study, and you may have even classes, maybe it's online, and eventually write an exam or a test, and you get certified in that area. And then a lot of the certification programs also have a maintenance program, so many points you have to retain your certification. But the bottom line is that certification program is where you study a certain knowledge base and you get tested against. It's also not an education program. You can't go to a university to get accredited. I'll give you many examples. You study medicine, you have to register under the board. You study law, you have to register under their accreditation scheme. You study accounting, you register under. So each one of these bodies, they have an education component, training component, which we have a lot of in the supply chain, although not as aligned or consistent as some of the other professions. But then you're registered under the scheme, and I'll show you the scheme. The scheme is a framework that has a set of eligibility criteria, a set of commitments. So there's two main parts to professional registration under the scheme. One is whether you are eligible, which I'll show you, and the other one is whether you maintain that, whether you ongoing retain, so you can maintain your agreement. Okay, but that's a framework. It's not a course. It's not a set of learning materials. It's not a certificate. Okay. What gives us the credibility? As I just mentioned earlier, is the guidelines of the PSA. We follow them slavishly because you can understand that we can't claim that our system or our scheme, rather, our scheme is built on the guidelines of the PSA if we don't follow them. So we check, and every time there's guidelines or updates of that, we will go through that and make sure that we still comply. And then also, the PSA has got, as I just mentioned a minute ago, they've got guidelines and they help organizations like ours to meet self-regulatory commitments. So because ASCI is self-regulating the scheme and self-regulating the scheme and then have commitments in terms of that regulation through our standards committee, through our board and so on, then they would help us have good guidelines for it. So our system has the credibility that I would imagine all the other systems have. So where does ASCI come in? So ASCI, as I mentioned, we've formulated our vision to lift the profession. It's very simple. Put it in some. We want to lift the profession, enhance the profession in a way that it's recognized. And that we probably have more supply chain managers or procurement directors or logistics directors around the table, depending on what's the nature of the company, which ones will sit. But we need to lift them up to the executive level. And we've got four elements I had in the slide before, the accreditation scheme, the CPD, the ethics management program, and advocacy. Today, I'm just going to share with you the accreditation scheme. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards on the others, but we will look at the accreditation scheme. So we looked at the broader domain of the supply chain, and you will understand that supply chain is basically a broad cross-functional ecosystem. That's what supply chains are. There's manufacturing in it, there's procurement in it, there's transport in it, there's legislative aspects in it. So it is a broad domain. So if we just say supply chain or supply chain management, then it's kind of, that you want to be all things to all people, and we can't be that. So we've broken down the domain into 5 main components, or we call it streams. The one is the supply chain management stream. On the supply chain management stream, we have defined, and we don't have time for that here now, but you can look at our website. we define that as the cross-functional aspects of the supply chain, which involves a lot of the technology and the systems and so on. The integrated product support, for those of you in the defense and in equipment world, used to be the integrated logistics support, but the terminology has globally changed and is changing in Australia as well to integrate product support, which is the engineering components around the equipment as it's concerned with the support and the supply chain. And we have three operational components: procurement, kind of buy in, make, operations management, and then logistics. And in defining these 5 streams, we will have 5 streams of registration, because somebody would be eligible to register as a logistics practitioner because of the criteria for that, but not necessarily procurement. So you can understand that in the broader domain, we needed to break it up. Now, each of those streams have got a community council. We refer to these streams as communities, a logistics community, procurement community, which are the members, the people registered in there. So they have a community council. So there is a council of experts, which are all registered practitioners, that oversees the scheme, that helps with the assessment of the criteria in the applications, and then, of course, help us to continuously develop the scheme. And just give you one example how we continuously develop the scheme. We have a set of criteria, and just put it very simple. A Masters of Supply Chain Management would be one of the qualifications that would count towards supply chain management practitioner. But then we have local universities with that, and we have a candidate coming from somewhere else with a Masters of Supply Chain, which is maybe slightly different, but still relevant. So we will add that to our list, as I put it very simply. We add to our list. So we're continuously assessing as people would apply qualifications that we may not have been aware of, or work environments that we were not aware of. Okay. So it's a continuous development. Now, we keep referring to a set of professional standards. These standards are exactly as per the guidelines of the PSA. And one component of the standard is relevancy of practice. Now, relevancy of practice is a sophisticated name for work experience. But you will also understand that somebody that has been in an executive level has got a much deeper, understanding or experience than somebody that has been in a narrow field and an operational. So there's different value in our eligibility criteria for work experience or relevancy, if you will, in terms of 3 levels. We talk about the operational level, managerial level, and the executive level. Now, I wouldn't go into the details of how we do that, but that's one component. And then we look at certifications and tertiary certifications or qualifications. And you can understand that that's all relevant. So again, in the terms of the criteria for eligibility, a logistics practitioner would have logistics related or logistics relevant tertiary qualifications or logistics related professional certification. Same with procurement. So all these things needs to be defined, and we have defined. And each of these councils, as I've mentioned, they oversee the various streams. Then we have the ethics management program. That's an important part of the balance between what I know and how I apply that in terms of the ethical requirements and obligations that I have in terms of your work, in terms of people you hire, in terms of subcontractors, make sure that we oversee the whole supply chain so we don't get caught up with slave labor and all these type of things. So there's a behavioral responsibility component to it. Then there's a third component which the PSA is very strong on, or feel very strong about, and that's a public register. Why does everyone have to be listed on a public register? Very simply, because there has to be a mechanism whereby it can be seen in public who is registered, what's the status. And I'll give you an example. Person X registered as a procurement practitioner, does not maintain it, does not re-register. 2-3 years later, they still use the acronym as a registered practitioner for procurement, but they're not on standard anymore. They have not maintained it anymore. So how would you know? So employers, staff, potential employers would look and say, well, hey, this guy's got a registration. They then can go back to the register and say, well, okay, this is expired or this has been suspended. And there's different things that happen depending on why the registration is not continued. It could be that they haven't registered. It's a simple reason. It could be that they breached some ethical criteria in our ethics management program. Okay, so there has to be a public register. And then the last thing, again, is they have to commit to continuous development because the registration needs to be maintained over a period and things change. As you know, there's new technologies. Now AI is taking over the world. So people need to keep up with those in order to maintain their registration in the various streams. And there is a way that we do that. Now, just on the CPD, I mentioned earlier that we did not have a structured structured CPD program. We have now structured the program, our CPD offerings within those 5 streams. So there's logistics offerings, procurement offerings, and so on. And that we believe is structured in a way that it can focus and offer continuous professional development in the areas that make up the supply chain. So that's as per the PSA. So the eligibility requirements I've mentioned, there's work experience, there's professional certifications, and there's history qualification. Okay. So this is the path that you can follow. Now it's maybe a little bit of a busy slide, but you will see that to register as an associate right on the left, there's the 3 components again, the 3 categories, if you will, work experience, professional certifications, and qualifications. And you can then register subject to how you fit the criteria in each of these streams. You can register as a procurement associate, operations, logistics associate, and so on. Then the next level is register as practitioner. It's the same macro requirements, but in different ratios, in different criteria, if you will. So from there, you can go to an advanced practitioner. Now, I put a little red arrows through, so you know there's all the 5 streams. But when you start in as an IPS associate, you will go to a oh, that line is wrong. I'm sorry. It should be going to the IPS practitioner and from the IPS practitioner to advanced practitioner. My apologies for the little error. But you follow one stream through. Now, there's 2 comments I'd like to make. One is one can start as an associate, and that is a reasonably, let me say, easy, if that's the right word, to register for that. Because we have, for example, students come out of university with a master's degree, but no experience. But they want to come into the stream and register eventually as practitioners. So there are criteria we would look at that. Then there are people that has no tertiary qualifications and maybe even no certifications, just work experience. So depending on our eligibility criteria, those people can register as associates. Now, I recently just last week spoke with a company where I was told that that will be an enormously valuable element of the staff development in this particular company because they have people with no qualifications but years and years of experience. And these people needs to be acknowledged, needs to be accredited in some form that say, hey guys, you've done a good job, we've worked through it, and you say you've fulfilled certain set of criteria. So that's the associate level. And then practitioner. But you can, depending on your qualifications, depending on your work experience, you can directly apply for an eligibility assessment as practitioner. There are people doing that can directly apply for an eligibility. So that's the various ways that you can do. But there's a pathway in each of these streams. And the criteria is overseen by a community council for each of these streams. So we have 5 community councils, one for logistics, one for operations, one for procurement, IPS, and supply chain management. So these 5 community councils, without going too much of what I'm sharing with you now, they all together serve on what we call the Standards Committee. The Professional Standards Committee oversees the scheme. So if you look at the governance that we have, the Standards Committee oversees the scheme on behalf of the board. Standards Committee is a subcommittee of the board, because ultimately, by the PSA guidelines, the ASCI board is responsible for the scheme, for its meeting the criteria, for it to comply with requirements and guidelines. That's the board's responsibility. Then it has the Standards Committee that operate on its behalf to oversee this, with on the Standards Committee all 5 streams, and the streams will then look at the individual components. So in a very short snapshot, the scheme recognizes and acknowledges qualifications and career achievements. And you will see there's no reference here to acknowledge your qualifications as the only thing. It has to be combined. And it's not, as I said, education program, it's not a certification program. You have the 5 streams and you have the 4 components: your ethics management commitment, your CPD commitment, your technical criteria or eligibility, and then your participation in the advocacy program. And we have some of our practitioners that is actively engaged in supporting us in formulating views that go through advocacy into industry. All right. So what are the benefits of this thing? The benefits on a macro level is that it offers or provides professional recognition and competence of individual career achievements. And it's professional because it fits and it complies with the guidelines of the Professional Standards Authority. Okay. What it gives in general, it demonstrates a level of competence. It demonstrates professional commitment to ongoing learning, with CPD program, which you need to earn 25 points for. You will see when you get emails on our offerings, there's always a little thing that is 1 point or 2 points or 8 points. So those points get accumulated for your registration. It demonstrates ethical credentials, because there is a set of criteria which you have to comply with, and overall provide enhanced status in the industry. Now, for the individual, that means professional recognition of competence. It means a demonstration of professional commitment to ongoing learning. It demonstrates ethical credentials through our ethics management program. It gives you enhanced professional status because you've got nominals that you use next to your name that says, I am registered, and the stream that you're registered in, which improve your career prospects. And we have examples of practitioners that had applied for positions in industry that had feedback to us about the value that the registration had for them in just adding that extra to their resume. And then basically you belong to a very exclusive community. So that's for the individual. So where does a company come in? A company has benefits because a company now gets get you as a registrant, either associate or practitioner or maybe advanced practitioner, who has the best practice knowledge because you are participating in an ongoing CPD program. And we as ASCI make sure that the offerings in that program represent latest trends and best practice. You have demonstrated capability in the individual that you are, so they know what they get, so to speak. It improves the company's supply chain management because what now happens, or the overall supply chain, because these people are on a level of recognition to confirm that they basically can do the job. So that's a value to the company and the credibility. And we see that particularly where I recently had a consulting company that says, if all my people are registered, I can put up my fees. Whether they would be able to do that in the industry today with cost of living, I don't know. But anyway, the credibility of the organization to its clients with registered practitioners in whatever the field is they operate. And the company then get a core level of embedded understanding because the understanding that is embedded in the individuals which are selected, eligible through the accreditation scheme, will then, of course, carry that expertise and that into the company. And the last point is where we've seen companies that actually take the accreditation, register under the scheme to mitigate their risk, because these people supposedly, and I use that word in a little bit of loose term, has the knowledge and the understanding and the experience to take better decisions in terms of all these elements, which means a company has lower risk. So there's individual benefit, there's organizational benefit, but then there's also industry benefit. It has an established set of standards now, which did not exist before. It has public trust because there is a mechanism, a body like ASCI that promotes the trust and confidence, because we have a scheme that has all the elements into it for the trust and confidence of the profession. Enhance the status of the supply chain profession. And I mean, if you go back again to the other professions that I had on the list earlier, you wouldn't appoint a lawyer if they're not registered or accredited under some scheme, or a doctor if they don't have a license to practice, or you can go on and on. Any of these, you won't go to a physiotherapist if they haven't got a certificate that says, hey, yeah, you've done your study, but here is your certificate that you can do what you're supposed to do. So that's where we see the big benefit for the industry. And then, of course, if you go through that, we are hoping to eventually have some level of standardized roles. So somebody says, this is a supply chain manager, that we have a reasonable understanding. Obviously, these things will differ from company to company, to type of business and industry, but there'll be a reasonable understanding. Somebody today says they're a lawyer, then I think there's a reasonable understanding what a lawyer is, or an accountant, or a real estate agent, or a physiotherapist. You can go on and on. But do we have a reasonable understanding if somebody says he's a procurement manager or a procurement practitioner? Maybe they see them as just a purchasing guy, or a logistics practitioner, which look after a whole logistics system, and it's not only looking after a set of trucks. So that's the type of standardized roles that we hope to achieve eventually. So the scheme complies with the PSA guidelines. The scheme has got structures in place for its governance, and it has individual benefits, organizational benefits, and broader industry benefits. So yeah, that's what the scheme is. There's different things that obviously go around the scheme, how we determine the eligibility criteria and what you need to do to be eligible. But I'm happy to answer questions in that regard. So in conclusion, the scheme enhances the credibility of the individual through the registration process. It enhances the workforce for the organization through employment of these people. It strengthens the status of the supply chain profession and industry, because you will see people that have gone through a set of criteria and will kind of appear on the scene, so to speak. And it improves the quality of the supply chain workforce, because we have this ongoing learning through the 5 streams in terms of our CPD portfolio. And by the way, ASCI has the broadest, most comprehensive portfolio of CPD offerings in the industry here. And then it enables compliance with regulatory requirements because of your commitment to the ethics management program. So that's the scheme. That's what it's all about and how it works. I'm happy to take some questions. If there are no questions on this, I repeat my invitation to you. You're welcome to send me an email or even call me if you have any questions in this regard. If you are interested in being assessed as going through the assessment for potential registration, you're welcome to approach us in this regard. You can email Sushma as well if you're interested, and we'll follow up from there. All right, Sushma, maybe over back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Peter. Yes, we do not have any questions yet. If anyone wants to ask any questions, can share their questions through the email as well. Thank you, Peter, for this amazing presentation. And thank you all for joining us in this webinar. And I hope you found the shared information useful and insightful. Remember to apply the knowledge gained in your work and share it with others. The webinar recording will be shared with you and uploaded to our ASCI YouTube channel in a few days. Don't forget to check out the website for more resources and upcoming events. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Sushma. Thank you, guys. Thank you for attending.